Welcome to Greentree Naturals, Certified Organic Farm. We've been certified organic since 1992 and gardening on this piece of property for 31 years. Wow, how'd that happen? We started, our first garden was in this, we call this the main garden. It's designed as a medicine wheel, which includes my heritage from Oklahoma. But our first year garden, and we got married in the center of this garden, in the medicine wheel garden, we had a rainbird set up in the middle so it would water the whole garden, a type thing. Over the years, it's progressed to just become the flower and herb garden. And we do a fair amount of cut flowers, not as much as we used to, but for herbs and cut flowers in here. And starting three or 4 years ago, this garden has become our experiment with no-till, and we've kind of been playing around with that on and off for the last few years, and I'll talk more about that later in the tour. But for no-till in here, we just have been laying down thick layers of newspaper, and then we put compost on top of the newspaper, soaker hose underneath, and then once that's watered in, I just cut through the soaker hose, transplant my flowers, and then mulch on top of it. And I've had mixed success. I mean, when you look around the flower garden, you can see some places where things look like they're doing really well, and other places they're not doing so well. And I think the big thing I'm finding is the roots don't seem to go as deep, and a lot of my flowers fall over, which I think has to do with a more shallow root system associated with the no-till. But it's always something, and that's a part of the gardening process, is acknowledging that no matter how much you know, there's always going to be successes and failures, and it keeps all small acreage farmers and gardeners humble. I was talking with somebody at the farm stand yesterday about that, and just acknowledging that we always have successes and failures. And this year our complete failure was chard and kale, and that's a plant that typically just is so overabundant here, and we still haven't figured out what happened. And I think more than anything, it just keeps us humble and know that we can't know everything. The thing about growing a garden in North Idaho, I mean, we're only 45 miles from the Canadian border. We're so far north. There's so many limitations to what we can grow. And of course, we want to grow all these things that don't want to grow here, that aren't native species. I mean, everybody wants a ripe tomato. Everybody wants sweet corn. I mean, we have to really work at getting a lot of our crops. So we use a lot of season extension techniques, and over the years, we've been able to find varieties that are more well suited to here, and we do a fair amount of seed saving to have varieties that have adapted to our specific microclimate. But for example, and maybe at some point you can get a shot of the hillside, we've got table grapes that we've been working on for 10 years. And now we have a table grape that's doing well in North Idaho, which is a miracle in itself. And then we have juicing grapes as well. We used to do more berries, but we found as we expanded our gardens, we just don't have time to pick them, so we've switched to grapes instead of berries. So we started with the main garden, knowing that we were going to expand our production area by doing cover crops outside of all this. We ended up moving the fence probably 4 or 5 times, moving the fence back as we got bigger, and cover cropping in between just to control the try to get some control over the knapweed and tansy that was in the field, because this farm the land was fallow and had been fallow for about 20 years when we came here, so nothing was growing here. So we really are always working on the soil fertility as best we can, and cover cropping is a big part of that. It's so pretty.
It is amazing.
It's just, look at those beans. So in here, I was talking about seed saving. We've got a heirloom sweet corn that we're hoping to get seed from. So we transplanted it a little bit later, so it would be pollinating a different time than our other sweet corn, so they wouldn't cross. And we don't know if we're going to get anything off of it or not, but we're hopeful, because the sweet corn we usually get is a hybrid, and we'd really rather have an heirloom just so we could consistently save the seed. And with the state of the challenge for getting seeds these days, the more seed we can save, the better. And we've had success saving seed on our miniature Indian popcorn. We've been saving it for like 15 years, and it's blues and purples and reds, and every now and then you can see that it's cross-pollinated with the sweet corn, because there'll be a little bit of yellow in there, but mostly it's pretty good. So we're hopeful that this seed crop will work out for us. And the seed, all the pole beans in here, they're about a week out. These are broad beans, which are some of my favorite. They're getting close, but not quite.
How many pounds of beans do you anticipate you'll harvest?
How many pounds of beans? Probably 100, 150 maybe out of here.
When you think about harvest in that way, do you equate that to a certain number of hours? Like, what would the labor look like if you were harvesting that many beans?
Not so much. You know, there was a point where I used to, with harvesting, I would come out to harvest and I'd check my watch and harvest and track how much time I was doing harvesting, and then equate that to the true cost of the food, and it was kind of depressing. So I mean, every now and then I will track it. I track it so I know how much time I need to invest in doing that crop. And as time goes by, I've certainly found ways to adjust with the marketing so it's more profitable, but not as far as just calculating the time span. It's more just for my time management than it is related to dollars per square foot. Because, you know, you can plan on all of those things, and it's all really up to Mother Nature what's going on. I mean, things are changing so much with the climate, and it's consistently inconsistent. I mean, we're hopeful. I mean, absolutely every gardener and farmer is full of hope that each seed that we plant is going to bring us a return, but we don't know that. We can't count on that. So I can do all the spreadsheets I want and the calculating, and like I said, with the chard and kale, we had a total crop failure, and that's a crop that usually is so abundant people don't know what to do with it. Why it failed, we haven't figured that out yet. We haven't had the time. It's like, okay, write that off, move on. That's what you got to do. So we use all kinds of season extension techniques to be able to do what we do here. You see, we've got 5 hoop houses. The hoop houses are all about 36 foot long, well, except this one is 18. So we use the hoop houses to extend the season by being able to get our crops in earlier and harvest later for frost protection. But we're also using shade cloth for when it's too hot, so it will cool things down in there. We're using, I think this is 30% shade cloth on these houses. For season extension, we also use Typar, the black weed mat on the bottom, which also helps heat things up. And that's, I mean, that's the challenge. You know, we're always working on trying to get things warmer for tomatoes to ripen, for peppers to ripen. But then there's a certain part of the summer when we hit 90 degrees that it's too hot for the fruit to set. So then we have to shade it. So it's one extreme or the other. But along with that season extension, our soils and how we always rotate all of our crops. And a part of that is we've got permanent holes cut in the plastic, and we can come in here and look at that. Well, that's a pretty full house there. You can't really see the holes, but we cut holes in the tie par, and we will rotate our crops. So next year the cherry tomatoes will be in the high tunnel, and sometimes I try to rotate and put an early crop of beans in to follow a heavy feeder. But sometimes we will also just pull up the tie par completely, move it, just relocate that to a different place. And like this year, the squash house over here, this hoop house, we're gonna go ahead and pull the squash out in the next couple weeks and put a cover crop in there, pull the tie par up, do a cover crop, and just let it rest. Because the structures are semi-permanent, but we do still rotate our crops and do what we can to manage that, and it seems to be working well as far as managing the pests and keeping the soil fertility working. But it's, you know, doing season extension, it's absolutely key to successful crops here, that's for sure. And then having the tie par also helps with the weeding. I mean, we spend a part of every single day, it seems like, weeding, and weed therapy is good, but there's a point where you just can't keep it up, because these fields were just grass and tansy and knapweed when we started out, and we still have a lot of grass. We've been able to control the tansy and knapweed pretty well, but all we can do is keep the grass mowed, and which helps with pest management, so they don't have so many places to thrive. But one of our value-added products, Meowie Wowie, and the honeybees, we do have 25 hives just outside the garden, and we had a beekeeper, a fellow that travels with his bees all over the country. He's got like 50 different locations for his bees. He got in touch with us a few years ago and asked if he could bring his honeybees here, and we were happy to oblige that, to have the additional pollinators on hand. We are, and that's one of the reasons we have so many flowers throughout our garden, is to encourage the beneficial insects and the pollinators. But since we've had the honeybees, when we said yes to the honeybees, we weren't really thinking, I mean, we're happy to have the pollinators, absolutely, but you think about 25 hives, 24 hives, I'm not sure, 24, 25, average 20,000 bees per hive. That's like 500,000 bees. That's a lot of bees. So we start thinking about all these years we've been working on increasing the beneficial insects, increasing the native pollinators, and then we bring the bees in. I started making observations and wondering if there's if they're competing for the same food source. So we've been working with Dave Crowder from WSU trying to get a SARE grant together to really take a closer look at that, because I've talked to the bee lab and bee specialists all over the country actually trying to get an answer to that, and nobody really knows if they compete for the same food. My concerns being, if the guy takes his bees away and doesn't come back, am I losing pollinators? Am I losing beneficials? I don't know. But when you look at these catnip plants, mostly what I'm seeing are bumblebees, not honeybees, which tells me that, well, no, I see some honeybees now, but there's enough for, the big thing is having enough food for everybody to be able to feed regularly.
Have you seen any differences with crop yield by having so many
Oh,
pollinators?
absolutely. Our with crop yields, increased pollination, like our winter squash is over closer to the bees. I mean, we have 100% pollination, and our yields probably increased by 50% on the winter squash for sure. Because a lot of thing with winter squash, there's so much later, and yeah, it has made a difference. The bees have made a difference. But yeah, I'm seeing a lot of bumbles in here, but look how happy they are. Yeah, when there's no traffic, you can hear, I mean, the bees, 500,000 bees make a pretty good hum.
I bet.
Yeah. Well, let's come in here. That's funny, I just, there's a magazine called, Vegetable Grower, National Vegetable Grower, something like that. I just did an interview with them last week on, and what they were asking was pest issues. They said the question was, what's your most serious pest and how do you deal with it? And curious, because we're an organic farm, and I really had to think about that. And they also ask about disease issues, which, as far as I know, we've never had any disease issues. I mean, it's possible that things are happening that we just don't know, but my feelings are, if the plants are still healthy looking and providing a good yield, if they have, I mean, we get a little powdery mildew on some things as they get older, but it doesn't seem to really affect the yields. As far as pests, probably aphids would probably be the number one, because they're born pregnant and there's going to be an infestation of aphids in any given situation. But I think it's really a key, one of the main keys to the success of our pest management is doing, taking the time to do a walkabout in the gardens at least once a week, walk through and really look closely for any kind of insect damage and be proactive with what we find. But I think more than anything, providing, because we have flowers everywhere, providing, and you see in the hoop houses, all the hoop houses, I have flowers on either end. Sometimes I have flowers in the middle. That's to encourage those beneficial insects and bees to come in to the hoop houses and help with pollination, but also provide a habitat for the beneficials. And I think by providing a healthy environment for those beneficial insects, it really minimizes the pests. I mean, we don't have a lot of pests. I mean, our aphids, I mean, they happen, but when the aphids happen, we probably 15-20 years ago, we bought some ladybugs and brought them in and released them. And I always read about them going away. You know, you get them and they go away. Oh, they stayed. They like it here. We put bales of straw out for them, and they cache up in those in the wintertime. And we were just looking in the orchard a couple weeks ago, and there were thousands of the pupa of the ladybug, which are the ones that eat all the aphids. And I mean, we will see those in different parts of the farm all the time. So I mean, the ladybugs have been, I mean, I know that by buying them and bringing them in, we're probably bringing in a whole plethora of different species of ladybugs that might not be native here, but they've thrived and have really helped us with the aphids. In some places where we do have aphids, I'll just call it ladybug habitat, and they'll lay their eggs there, and then that progresses. And for pests, for insect pests, that's really, it's more about proactive management and clear observation. I put sticky traps out. I mean, in the spring we do often have some flea beetle in the high tunnel. Certain species of plants like eggplant, flea beetles love eggplant. I put sticky traps every other plant, and that seems to help manage that. But very little I did this spring, and we'll use row covers for a lot of things early on. For like beets, if you cover them early on, you can eliminate the leaf miner. There's a fly that lays eggs and mines through the leaves. If we don't get the cover on early enough, we'll get that leaf miner, in which case I might spray neem early in the spring. I will only use neem oil when the beneficials and pollinators aren't in abundance. As we move into the season, I won't use it because I don't want to hurt those guys, because they do such a good job for us. So it's pretty much an early spring application only. But not a lot of pest issues. I mean, there's some, you'll see grasshoppers around and they chew on stuff. Well, they don't do that much damage. But we have experimented, back to the season extension piece, we've experimented over the years of growing peppers outside on block weed mat and inside, and compared yields, and we just don't get the yields outside, so we only grow our peppers undercover. With the sun gold tomatoes, we've tried those outside and inside, and still the yields are like 30% more undercover. So this side of the garden, we moved these hoop houses here 3 years ago, I think. These 3 hoop houses used to be all asparagus patch, and we couldn't keep it weeded, so we gave it up and turned it into something else. Now, that's the way it is with a lot of things here. We'll try different things, and for the research that we've done on the farm, everything seems to go with 3 years. So we'll try something for 3 years, and if it doesn't produce for us, or bring the yields that we want, or it has any issues or failures or successes, if it's something we like, we'll give it 3 years. And if in the 3rd year it's still, we have a good average, we'll keep going. If not, we forget about it and move on. And it's changed. The climate is changing so much here. I mean, from us starting 30 years ago, it's different. It's definitely different. I mean, the extremes, you know, it's in the springtime, it's cold and rainy, and then we have a week of 90 degrees, and then it's back to cold and rainy. And then, like now for the fall, we've got, today it's supposed to be 91, tomorrow 92, Sunday 72 and rain, Monday 69 and rain, and then so it's just hot cold, and that's where the season extension comes in. And the season extension means all those different methods that we use to do that. We've got our row covers ready. I think it said on Tuesday or Wednesday 36. So we've got 2 90-foot rows of tomatoes out there that we want to protect, and we'll be covering them on that night of 36, just in case it decides to go a little bit colder. Right? The Sandpoint water tomatoes that you seed off around here.
How are they doing?
Oh my gosh, they are so prolific.
Really?
Those ones that I want to have. Every community garden needs to have those. So these are Sandpoint and Bonner heirloom tomatoes that Jen Jensen gave us last year. I think she gave us some seed. And since they're heirlooms, that means they have been around for at least 50 years. And we were happy to bring them back and into our production. And they are tomato that I think, hands down, for anybody in Bonner County, Boundary County, I think anybody could get a ripe tomato with these guys. They're so prolific for being a little tomato. I mean, we probably get a bushel of tomatoes per plant. That's pretty high yielding. And these are an heirloom that some friends of mine were growing on their farm in Missouri, and they had been saving this seed for 25 years, something like that. And we swap seeds because we have a lot of tomato seeds that we've been saving for a long time. And I thought, seed from Missouri, no way. So this is probably the 3rd or 4th year that we've saved this seed, and it's starting to adapt to our environment. And we call this the homestead tomato. Oh, I know one thing we wanted to talk about in here. See the red?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
We've had internships and mentorships here on the farm for many years, and with that we're always doing experiments because it's good for the students to have that opportunity. But I had been reading in numerous seed catalogs about this red plastic increasing yields of tomatoes by 20%. I'm like, yeah, right, they're just trying to sell you some red plastic, and it's pretty cheap, cheesy stuff. But so we, with Sun Golds one year, you saw those sweet yellow orbs, cherry tomatoes we were nibbling on a minute ago. We did red. We have black weed mat down, but we did red under tomatoes on one side and no red on the other side, and then we harvested separately to compare yields. And I'll be darned, it was right at 20% increase with the red weed mat. So in the undercovers we're using, and this is the same red stuff that we've been using all these years, and if we're really gentle with it, it does make a difference.
Wow. Did they say why?
It's just how the reflective light comes back, and it's beneficial for the tomatoes.
I always think about things like, did tomatoes originate someplace where the soil was more red?
Oh,
there's some evolutionary basis for that type of thing.
Well, yeah, I could see that. Have to look that up. I know Oklahoma is red earth. I've got a book that's The Origin of Foods. It's really old. It's put out in the 50s. We'll have to look up tomatoes and see when. I don't know where they came from. I always wonder with vegetables, where was the point that somebody went, you want to try that? You try it first, and we'll go from there. But anyway, we're really happy to have these Bonner and Sandpoint tomatoes in our system, and we donated probably, I don't know how many, a lot of these plants to the food bank gardens and the community gardens this year, and everybody's really happy about it because they're all getting ripe tomatoes. So we're definitely going to be growing more for the community gardens next year. Tomatoes out of control. So our melons are something that we don't sell the melons, we keep them for ourselves. And this is a variety that we've been saving for a number of years, and we actually get ripe melons. Not many, but
I see a few in there.
Anywhere you see red flagging means it's a seed crop. Look at all the honeybees on here.
Oh yeah, I can hear them. And And did you let this go to seed for pollination?
Yeah. Well, we were hoping to get seed. We've been trying to get seed from this variety of broccoli for a few years, and our season just isn't long enough. But the bees love it. This whole section is just turned into bee haven. They're so happy.
This year, are there other people working in the garden with you and Thom, or is it pretty much the two of you?
It's pretty much the two of us. We have one volunteer that comes for 2 hours a week to weed. And then we have one volunteer, Linda Kirschman, who was an intern with us 6 years ago. And Linda comes and helps with the CSAs, put the CSAs together. That's it. Otherwise, it's just us, which I don't know. I really oftentimes walk around and look and, I mean, I'm 68, Thom's 72. We rock it.
You sure do.
You gotta love it. I mean, there's no way anybody should ever go into a garden this scale or small acreage farming unless you love it. And I keep hearing people talk about, well, gee, that looks like fun. Well, yeah, we have fun, but we work our tails off. I mean, of course, I still have a considerable tail, but it's all relative. I mean, we try to keep the gardens in some semblance of, not by any means not manicured, but mowed and trimmed, for that's a part of the holistic system of keeping things together. If you don't, you have to keep things mowed to help eliminate habitat for things like grasshoppers. That's a part of the pest control, is keeping things clean and mowed. So that's a part of, and when I teach the organic gardening workshops, I'm always reminding everybody, you know, it's very much a holistic system. Everything you do out here is related to something else. I mean, our crop rotation, the flowers increase the pollination. The crop rotation has to do with pests. It has to do with soil fertility. All of that. It's all an important part, and a very delicate balance.
And do you cover crop like over the winter for soil protection?
Well, here's a perfect place to move into that. So we've got mustard cover crop coming up here. This was all garlic. Where you see we've got weeds coming in between the rows, but you can see the mustard where the soaker hoses are. Mm-hmm. So as soon as the garlic gets harvested, we plant mustard as a follow-up. And then our crop rotation, I'm not sure what this will be next year. We've got lettuce under shade. We've got 2 different ages. We just transplanted some new lettuce under shade cloth over there, and then old lettuce under another one. The cosmos are a seed crop. We started doing, we've always been seed savers for ourselves, but 3 years ago we started saving seeds and selling seeds to Snake River Seed Cooperative out of Boise. And we just do a few crops. We do, the cosmos is a new one, because I grew those last year and I really liked them, and I thought, no, that's a crop. The bees love them. They're good for beneficial insects. They thrive. They're hardy. So that's all seed crop. Then when we go in the high tunnel, I'll show you another seed crop. And then we're doing Gatherer's Gold peppers and snow peas. We have our snow peas we've been saving seed from for over 20 years, and they've adapted to this extreme heat that comes in May. So we've got this heat tolerant snow pea that we've developed, and I call it summer snow. So nice. We're selling them that. So this was all garlic. And
now the mustard, does that have some specific benefits as a cover crop?
We started using the mustard well, quite a few years ago. Time kind of blurs. We we do a fair amount of on-farm research, and some years ago we did a research project with a WSU student entomologist who was studying the brassica flea beetle, and in her research study, we gave her some ground here to do her project in, had a row of broccoli, a row of mustard, a row of broccoli, and flea beetles love mustard. So the mustard was a catch crop, a trap crop. And in the process of doing that study with her, once it was done, we turned the mustard back into the soil and making observations that the soil tilth improved greatly. The weed production following the mustard was minimized. All kinds of things about the mustard. So I wrote the company that the mustard came from and told them about my observations and said, this is a great product. Thank you so much for, having this. And as we went through time, I ended up, if you go to mightymustard.com, I'm quoted all over their website. And in exchange, they were giving us mustard seed. And what we found about it, so they ended up sending us 50 pounds of mustard and said, well, try this out and let us know what you think. So as we started exploring using the mustard, we found that it germinates in just about any kind of temperature, any kind of weather. It grows fast. It creates a lot of biomass. It's got components in it that inhibit weed growth. I mean, I can't think of any reasons not to go with the mustard. The main thing with growing it as a cover crop is you can't plant right into it immediately. You've got to wait a period of time. So for a crop like garlic, any crops that we harvest early, we always follow it with mustard. Grows fast, creates good biomass, helps inhibit the weeds. You can't leave something fallow. The weeds will just come in. So that's really, the mustard has really become an important part of our crop rotation and soil fertility. Sweet corn, and we just started harvesting last week, and I think we'll have second harvest next week. But at the farm stand, sweet corn was crazy. I mean, it was mostly pre-ordered, and yesterday I had 2 people that had ordered sweet corn for the following week, so they were the only people that got corn yesterday. And when they came up and said something, I was like, shh, don't say anything, because people go crazy for the sweet corn. We do get, I know a lot of small acreage farmers do not grow and sell sweet corn because it takes a lot out of the soil. What we will do next year, once we're done with harvest and this comes out, we will plant a spring cover crop of mustard in this spot and probably follow with beans and or peas. But the big thing with sweet corn, I was talking to a friend the other day in Texas, and she said, yeah, we're getting sweet corn for $1. Well, we call ours pirate corn, Buccaneer. And a lot of times people go, $1 an ear for sweet corn? Are you kidding me? And I went, taste it. They never question again. But really, for what goes into it, and you only get 2 ears per plant, and what it draws out of the nutrients it takes out of the soil, we wouldn't do it if we couldn't get some kind of return on it. But yesterday I didn't do sweet corn at the farm stand, and I just decided tomorrow I'll spend the day freezing, processing some sweet corn, and then we'll see what we have next week to sell.
I heard you talking to a customer about the sweet corn and like meeting your own needs first.
Yes. With actually, that aspect of everything that we grow, we get the first of everything. I mean, that's part of the joy of it. But with the sweet corn, last week, and I've done this, I know you were talking to Cricket at the farm stand yesterday. Last year, when she came for sweet corn nobody else was around. She came later, and I husked an ear of corn and broke it in half and handed it to her, and I said, try this. Raw? You want me to taste raw corn? I went, just try it. And she very sheepishly, and her eyes got big. She said, oh my gosh, I've never tasted anything so sweet.
Thank you.
I think we're always experimenting. The thing is, I find with a lot of my students on our organic gardening, so I have an organic gardening workshop series that we've done for 25 years. It's a 7-week course here on the farm. This is the first year in 25 I haven't done that. And one of the things I'm telling everybody, because so many people that come to take the workshops are from they're new gardeners here, or sometimes it's people that have been gardening here for a long time and just haven't had a success, and they're frustrated and want to, well, maybe I've read books, now I want to try a workshop. But for example, what I find so often is I've had several people, well, I've read books on square foot gardening, and I've been doing square foot gardening, and it's just, I'm not getting the yields. Well, a lot of those, we have so much information out there on different things to try, but they might work great in Texas or Oklahoma or Georgia or North Carolina, but you get up here in the North Country and it's very specific. Even in just Bonner County, we've got different microclimates at different elevations. I mean, if people are trying to grow at 3,200 feet, that's the same as 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 feet in Colorado. But we also have different microclimates just in our garden. So with that, the variables are present in our location, but they're present throughout the county. Like for here, I was just talking about that. If you look over here, we've got trees, a tree line all along the side here. When we first came here, these trees were only 3 feet high. Well, 30 years later, they're tall. Well, the morning sun comes up over that mountain. These trees create shade, which creates a frost pocket. It's turned this whole side of the garden into a frost pocket, which never was there before. So the microclimate has changed, and it will change if in a home gardener or a small farm situation. Those kind of things are observations that you have to be making all the time because the environment is changing. And it's up to us to make those observations to see what we can do about it. So we have discovered in making that, I mean, just watching the shadows, and you can see we still have shadows over here. This is the coldest part of the garden, so we're fortunate that our neighbors who live away, this is actually the people we bought the farm from, the second generation from them, have given us permission to come in and thin out these trees, and once we open that up, we will eliminate that frost pocket here. But I think those kind of observations are really important to be making wherever you are. And for me, I mean, Thom and I love research. We love, I mean, I read something or I see a video about it and I go, well, like with the red mulch. I mean, you read in a magazine, 20%, really? I don't believe that. So we'll try it. But a lot of things that you might read in a book, like I said, it might not be applicable to where you are. So I think trying different things is a good idea. I don't think the fact that it worked in California means it's going to work here. So we're always looking at ways to diversify how we grow, how to increase our yields, how to do what we're doing as better stewards of the land in a way that we can do it sustainably. Because it's not, we couldn't do what we've been doing for 30 years without making this a sustainable enterprise. It's not about throwing money at it. You know, you don't plant nickels and get dollars out of the soil. It doesn't work that way. So it's always about sustainability and how that comes back to a way that we can stay in balance and be good stewards of this land that we're responsible for. So yeah, with that, on-farm research is a really important thing to us, and we do it on our own no matter what. But back in this corner, you'll see some, looks like popsicle sticks sticking out. That is a research project that is with U of I entomology department, following. So when we started doing the no-till in the main garden, we also experimented with no-till out here. So maybe 5 years ago, we took, I think there's 7 or 8 rows there. We took that out of production, we solarized it, and then we did no-till, and wanted to, because that's the big thing. Everybody's talking about no-till, so we thought, well, okay, well, we'll try it. Well, we tried it, and what ended up happening was we got an infestation of wireworms, prolific wireworms. And fortunately, we connected with a grad student who was specializing in wireworms. Atusa was looking for a place that had wireworms, and she was so excited when she came here. They set out all these traps. They identified 3 different species, and we had more wireworms and adult click beetles here than anywhere they had. I mean, they were thrilled about it. We're not so happy about it, but what we have here is we did the crop is black beans, which will be for a dry bean. I figured that would be something that we could just look at yields, and we have there's 2 other locations. The Sandpoint Organic Center is doing one, and then Pokey Creek Farm out of Santa is doing one. But we're the place that has the main infestation, and they've been catching. They set out click beetle traps early in the spring. I mean, there would be thousands of adult click beetles in each one of those traps. And then they've done traps, and I mean, she should be coming soon to pull up to do the last of her plots, I think. So they've been collecting the wireworms and taking them back into a laboratory and infecting them with bacteria, and then bringing things back and forth, and we'll see. Because wireworms apparently will be in the soil for like 10 years. And they either eat the roots of the plants, or they bore into carrots or potatoes, and they can do a lot of damage. So we don't, I mean, our other option would be to fence this off and put chickens in here, but you know, the wireworms are moving out from this location. So needless to say, our first encounter with doing no-till created a pest infestation. So in the first year we had that pest infestation was the first year I started growing for Snake River seed, and we were supposed to do a broccoli crop, and I was bragging about our broccoli crop, and that's one of the things I keep telling everybody, you know, this is a very humbling thing to do. So I had all these beautiful broccolis in here and a nice cold spot in the garden, and after about 2 weeks my beautiful plants just start dying one by one by one, and it was when I pulled them up, they had just wireworms eating the roots. So I did, my proactive attempt was I buried a mature carrot next to every plant. Wireworms like carrots better than anything. Every 3 days I'd go through, pull the carrot out, pull the wireworms out, put them in a can, put the carrot back in. It was just, so consequently we've minimized what we've been doing out here. But the black beans as a dry bean seem like they're doing good.
So you must have had wireworms, and you just created a perfect habitat for them to explode.
Exactly. So then we followed, once we got the wireworms, we've been doing just mustard cover crops in there, keeping something growing with the hope that would have some effect. But we'll see what happens after this project. So the high tunnel, we did, the first year we put up the high tunnel, we did a research project with Jen Jensen, U of I, and we compared yields, same species of vegetable yields in a high tunnel to a hoop house. Because I wasn't convinced, you know, everybody was getting high tunnels. I wasn't really convinced that a high tunnel was worth the value of it, because this structure's maybe $4,000, where a 36-foot hoop house is more like maybe $1,000. And I'm not really convinced that the high tunnel does increase yields. It's nice having the space, and the heat does rise better since you can open the sides and go through that process. But we do rotate our crops in here, so I always do a bean crop in here that I alternate each year for soil fertility. We've got Gatherer's Gold peppers. This is all seed crop in here that we'll start closing this up at night since it's starting to get cold. We've got seed crop for peppers. We've got eggplant and cucumbers. And these cucumbers usually alternate with those sun gold tomatoes that were in another hoop house, that we alternate cucumbers to tomatoes. See, I've got flowers in the center to bring in the pollinators. Flowers on the end to bring in the pollinators. We always do flowers on the ends of all of our beds to encourage that. So the processing area, we are, yay, making a change. We had somebody donate some, is it called Trex that we're gonna put a floor in, which will make it a lot better. This way, if anything drops to the ground, it stays there. If you have a floor, well, it'll probably still stay there. But everything, we drive everything up in the van. You see the van's parked in the yard because the battery's dead, but that's just the way it is. Everything we harvest in the garden, we load into the van, we bring it up here. And it's just, a lot of people said, well, why didn't you do your processing area down below? Well, it's full sun down there. We have shade up here from the trees, but as well as the canopy, so we just do it here. And we've got a walk-in cooler. I'll show you that as well. But everything comes up here. We wash it either out here, or depending on what it is, we've got more in here. Go on, Henry. We've got wash tubs and harvest baskets, and everything gets bleached out after every use, and wash hands often. That's about the best thing we can do. We did kind of switch our tables so we can wipe them down regularly with bleach for the, I mean, I don't know that our food safety process has changed any with COVID. I mean, I'm always meticulous about, I want clean food. I want people to have clean food, and we sell the best of the best, and keep everything as clean as we can. And so this is where it happens.
What about storage?
Storage, we built, our old sauna turned into a walk-in, so we put in a cool bot, and I'll show you the cool bots around here.
I seem to remember this being the goat area.
Goats over here.
Goats over there.
And this poor plant died this year. We're gonna cut that out, and no, get back, Henry. We've got storage boxes on either side here, and then cool bot. Good place to be on a hot day.